two of my 10 grandchildren. Anyway, back to Kurt.
Okay.
And Suzanne muted her thing. So looking at next year, what do you see as some of the issues that you'll be looking at next year?
Rod, I appreciate you having me tonight also. So just thank you on that. I think as we look at some of the issues, of course, coming up is going to be a lot of the parks. We're going to have a couple of new parks coming on. That will be, probably what residents will be excited about, is to hear about what's going on with parks. Of course, the ongoing situation there with open space, looking at different disposals of open space or maintenance of open space. We'll be looking at trails. I think we'll also be always talking about traffic and roads. It seems those are the things. I think that because of we're in a drought, we'll be talking a lot about water conservation. I think we'll be talking about our, if we're putting meters in, what's the plan? How's that could be financed? Depending on what kind of happens, I think public safety will be brought up quite a bit.
Yes, and based on our meeting this morning, that's something we should probably let people know right away. Earlier this year, Salt Lake changed their starting salary for police and raised it to $38 an hour. Ours is currently $22 an hour. The reason Salt Lake did it was because with what happened last year, they had a lot. Evidently, according to our chief, they have hundreds of police officers leave their force, leave the policing altogether, retire, move somewhere else, and they were really hurting and trying to get people. So they raised their starting wage significantly, and then some of the other cities and in Salt Lake followed suit, and that pressure will eventually creep down here. To what extent, I don't know. Clearly, this is, for people that want to work in an area like Highland and Alpine, where it's they actually do a lot of service. They do a lot of helping as opposed to fight a lot of crime and deal with those kind of issues. The spouses of the officers like their significant other to be working at Lone Peak because they don't have to worry so much about their safety. So I don't know that we'll have to go up to 38, but that's a heavy lift, and we'll see some pressure there next year. I don't know what the answer will be.
Yeah.
So that will come up. Unfortunately, that's when the world changes on you, you have to do different things, and we'll just see how that plays out. Like I said, and I think Kurt would agree that we have some advantages here that can draw people because of the location, the culture, where we live, etc. So
I agree. A couple other things, Rod, I think they'll probably in the next year or two might come up is going to be our general plan, which is kind of, looking again, hey, how is the plan looking and coming about? I think we'll look at general plan. There's some excitement, that we'll probably see some new businesses coming up this next couple of years coming in. We've got, we'll discuss a little bit that later today. We've got some new businesses coming. We've got
we can start that. You can mention the two that we talked about them last night at our council meeting.
Yeah. So, as we look at businesses over by Lone Peak in the Boyer subdivision, they have shown and have submitted site drawings for a Costa Vida restaurant. They're right off of Canal Boulevard, as well as an Arby's. So that we have the drawings in the city. There will be another restaurant also coming in over in front of Myers. You notice there's a little dirt pad there off the side, the south of Myers. There will also be another restaurant user coming. They actually have a lease signed. I'll just say that most people will be happy if they like Hawaiian food.
Okay.
Here's that. I've actually talked to that tenant. I think you maybe have had some conversations, and then there'll be also another tenant in that building also with them that signed lease. So we got leases there. We're actively negotiating. I think the property owner there by where Quick Quack's at, Little Caesars back behind theirs, actively negotiating with several users. We might see some businesses coming in there, as well as Boyer has, I believe, about another 4.5 acres that they are also actively having several inquiries come on. So, I mean, we'll have some excitement of some new businesses, I think, in the next couple of years.
Yep. And for Costa Vida fans, that's great. I actually talked to somebody a while ago that was an Arby's fan. I knew at the time there was going to be an Arby's here, but I couldn't say it. But he was saying, I drive X amount of miles to Arby's, and I'm thinking I would do that for In-N-Out, but anyway, Arby's is great. I like their food.
Yeah, Mayor, we've already talked a little bit about taxes and debt, and just with the tax, maybe we're gonna have to look at some different things that might pertain to the public safety. We have also, there's been some questions that come up. We're charging a road fee and a public safety fee. Is that gonna have to change? So that's another issue. I think we've noticed in several other communities their emergency response, if it be for flooding or it's fires or things of that nature. There's going to be some of those issues we're going to probably need to address. So there's several things that will keep a lot of balls in the air.
Yes, a lot of balls, so that you're not inheriting a done community with no problems. Is what we're saying here. That the challenges we face today will continue. There's no silver bullets, and there will be things come up that we have no idea about those happen, and you get, I don't know, what do you call it, hit from behind sometimes. What? I didn't see that one coming.
Yeah.
So I don't know what those will be, but we just know that will happen. I don't know what that is. You mentioned the road fee, and where we are at in the world today is that there was a lawsuit filed against PG's road fee, and it was specific to PG. The city lost in district court, and then they appealed it, and the Supreme Court asked an appeals court to look at it. That process started. Then the state Supreme Court said, no, we want it back. And so they are doing briefings right now. It's on the immediate horizon. I don't know if right now means today or tomorrow, but in the next month, there'll be new briefings done to the Supreme Court. And then there will be, they'll argue it in front of the court, and the best estimates that we have, or I don't even know how good they are, but the thinking is it'll be towards the end of next year before a decision comes out. So we did have another person join us. Welcome, whomever that is. Sarah, that's who it is. Thank you for joining us. We're just talking about our road fee. So it's that Pleasant Grove case is now at the Supreme Court, and where it's the Supreme Court, we're not sure what their ruling will be, and if it's adverse to the road fee, if it will be broader than that, if it will cover other fees, because there are a number of other cities like us that charge a public safety fee. In fact, Alpine and Cedar Hills both do. It's a nominal fee, but one is $6.50 and the other is $1 a month. And I believe there are other cities that do that as well. So we don't know what their decision will be. And the council next year may opt to say, you know what, given that we don't know what the status of that case is, maybe we plan out a budget that says we will fund those items through a property tax rather than a fee, and a budget that says we'll continue to fund it through a fee, and then wait until August when you have to do truth in taxations to switch from a tax to a fee. We wouldn't necessarily be collecting any more money. It's just going to come out of a different bucket. It will change how it's allocated a little bit, but the net to the city isn't going to change. So I think that's a strategy that could be pursued. It might be the safe one, but that'll be up to the new mayor and council.
Correct.
Out that you can promote an agenda, but you have no vote. So it's really the council that will determine what that is. So I see that we have Debbie and Lynn Ward joined us, Sarah, and then my wife. My grandkids already asked a question I couldn't answer, but does do either of you, Debbie or Lynn or Sarah, have a question they want to share with us? Now, both Sarah, you're unmuted. Debbie and Lynn, you're muted. If you want to ask a question, feel free to unmute. Or you can
I don't
use.
have one right now, Mayor, but I might have one in a minute.
Okay, that is a fair thing. Let me look at the chat. Nobody's chatted. You can also ask questions via chat if you'd like. So let's continue, Kurt. So before I rudely kind of interrupted, we were we were talking about a variety of issues that we're looking at for next year.
Maybe why don't we kind of start with the parks? I think we've got to, there's a lot of excitement on the parks. There's some things that deal with that. So if you want to maybe share a slide and we can discuss whichever, if it's the Mountain Ridge that comes up or the Dry Creek Lake Park that comes up.
I've got the Mountain Ridge Park, the current plan for the whole park. Can you see that?
Yep. Okay. And I think as we look at the Mountain Ridge Park, if I was a resident, last night at the city council, we already have the funding for about $2.5 million, which came from some property sales that the city has been doing over the last several years, that is going to help fund the Mountain Ridge Park. Then also the new funding that's coming in as part of the COVID money that was just approved by Congress as a council last night. This money that came in 2021, we've now allocated to go to Mountain Ridge Park. And
so the federal money that it's called ARPA funds.
And so your ARPA, we will see the funds going in towards Mountain Ridge Park. So the residents should see hopefully some type of movement on this park next year. We'll still see if we can get out to bid and get going in the spring. It might be, as of presented last night, it might be, as we show there, it might be just 4 pickleball courts with a parking lot and some type of playground pavilion and restrooms.
Right. So the pavilions and the restrooms will be down here where the cursor is. And then right now the playground is planned for right here. And one of the strategies we can employ is we can say, this is a base that we're looking at. And then when we go out to bid, we can say, and we're also interested in these additional items. Please bid those if you choose to, and then we can gauge how far our money will go.
Correct. And, a lot of people, at least, and I'm one of them, going, man, it seems if you're spending $2.5 million, or here, if we go all the way out, you're spending $3 million, you're sure not getting very much. Yeah. This site to have along its northern border a pretty good irrigation ditch that needs to be taken care of. So there's a lot of infrastructure costs to get prepared for the park and bring in a lot of the infrastructure, if it be sewer, water, taking care of that, the irrigation ditch there. And so a lot of that money, $1 million or so, will be taken on site improvement before we probably start a lot on this stuff in the park.
Right. And then, we may get the bids may come back and we might find, hey, we can ask for more. We just, right now, you don't know because of the supply chain issues in the construction world. Costs are all over the map. Right?
And a lot of people, and I've probably been one saying, hey, maybe if we wait a little bit, the cost might come down. One of our concerns is we don't, the Highlands received ARPA money, as well as every other city in the entire United States has received ARPA money. Well, if they start opting to go into parks or to other projects, a lot of developers that do stuff that with cities are going to start getting filled up. I mean, that would be my concern, is that we're going to see this pipeline start filling up for the next 2 or 3 years, and we can't really forecast after that. If we look back 2 years ago, what we thought our cost would be to do this park, it has sure shifted on us in the last 2 years.
Yes. Now, yep. And so we are going to have a work session here sometime in the next 4 to 6 weeks, where 2 of our council members have started talking to other cities to see, lessons learned when they built all abilities or inclusive park. And to go through that before we start putting hard dollars against something where we might want to do a change. It's always cheaper to do the change earlier than later. And so even if it costs, if it looks like a change is warranted and we've already got, construction drawings and plans and bidding documents almost ready to go for what we have here, it'd still be cheaper to change it now than to say, oops, let's reconfigure it after it's constructed. So,
yeah. And we don't have any fields on there. We are looking at other alternatives, if you look at those 3 fields, do we want to look at, Lehigh City worked with a company by the name of Arsenal Soccer, where the soccer leagues came and they put in the fields for, payment for, they get to use them. And that's one option to look at to try to get funds. We have some more ARPA funds coming next year. Is that the appropriate use of those other ARPA funds? We'll get about another 1.2 million in 2022 that comes from the federal government. Is this going to be, where the council wants to put it to maybe try to finish off some of the fields here with the trail around? So there's a lot of things. You brought up the All Abilities Park there, Mayor Mann. The All Abilities Park, I think, is going to be a great feature for Highland. As a lot of us know, kind of kitty corner from here, we have Courage Range. A lot of people maybe are not aware, but there's a church building at 6,000 West and 10,400 North. There's Special Needs Mutual that actually they have that weekly there. I think, I can't remember, Mayor, if it was you or someone else that said there was a little bit of a study done in Highland. We felt like those special needs were a little bit higher in this area, that as we look at the numbers. And so we also feel that this would be a good addition to the community and be very inclusive of everyone to have. And that's why I think that you talk about the council being a little sensitive about what we're trying to put in. We recognize we want to do all abilities, but we also want the park to be looking at all ages that might, in those younger ages that might be able to do it, if it be from a toddler all the way up to, a 10, 12-year-old, somewhere in there. So, this is kind of Highland's last shot at kind of doing a park. We don't have a lot of other space for a park. This is our one big park.
Yep. And you mentioned that you were in Vegas last weekend for a sporting event, not to be discussed, but we can smile at the outcome.
Yeah, no. And I was down there and I really watched it. Went to there was the fan fest that this team I went to support down there. They had a big park, and I was really surprised to see they had a specific area as a toddler park, and then right next to it, they kind of had a teenage park. And I looked and gone, wow, they're just envisioning, and I think this is what you're seeing. Councilmember Rodella and Councilmember Bills are seeing at some of these other parks, is that, hey, you can do it all inclusive and have some pretty cool features. And we want to make sure we get this right. And I think that's why you're seeing those 2 council members be very sensitive about, hey, let's get this All Abilities Park right.
Yeah, even though we've been working at it a long time, to me it's worth doing what they're doing there. So I'll be excited to see what happens when it's all said and done. The deal that Lehigh has with Arsenal Soccer is, they built it. Lehigh helped rough grade the ground, and then Arsenal did everything else. It's a 10-year agreement. In exchange for Arsenal putting in the park and managing it, maintaining it, fertilizing it, etc., they get 70% of the scheduled time is available to them first. And that's, I talked to Mark Johnson, the Lehigh mayor, and he was initially a little bit skeptical of that. But he said he would do it again based on their experience to date. Their residents get a lot of time on it because, even though they can schedule up to 70%, it doesn't happen. And people are just used to the idea, if there's nothing on there, then I can come and use it. And their residents are using it as a remote control airfield, if you want to call it that, and flying kites and doing other things that you might expect in a park. So he felt that was a good trade-off.
And I think, Mayor, as you bring that up, I don't know if that means all 3 fields will be done that way. We could do one field that way, 2 fields, or all
Right.
3. We have had discussions with several of it's traditionally soccer that I think has been interested in doing something. So that will be an active discussion that will probably, as we look going in, hopefully get a little more firmed up, here in the winter, so we can do something in the spring. But that will be something kind of going in the new year. The other slide you have, I think, is also of Dry Creek Lake, unless there's someone that has questions on Mountain Ridge Park.
I had just one question.
Okay.
If I could ask it, in terms of and maybe you kind of addressed that, with the limited space, and you had the 3 soccer fields. I just was wondering how it was determined, because, there's a lot of space being devoted to soccer fields in that park.
Correct.
And I guess I support the idea that maybe there's 2 soccer fields and some other kinds of things. But it sounds like you're looking into that. So that was the main question I had on that.
That's a really good question. We did a survey 2 years ago and asked, because when we started looking at Mountain Ridge Park, actually it was 2019. So in 2018, but in 2019, we did a survey, and the citywide survey had 1,100 and something participants. And in that, we asked residents to pick 2 or 3 out of a list of, 20 amenities that could go into parks. Everything from trails to playgrounds to All Abilities Playground and pickleball, bocce ball, horseshoes, tennis. The 4 top vote getters by far, they were all over, over 10% of the respondents picked them. I don't remember how I calculated, but anyway, whatever measure I use, I'll see as we go on if I can bring up that survey. But the number 1 was trails in the park, the walking trails in the park. Then it was playgrounds, All Abilities Playground, and grass fields that were next. And the other alternative use for the park in terms of sports would be like a baseball or softball field. Well, the baseball field came in about a third of what the top 4 were. So a third of whatever their vote count was that, and there were a lot in between. Pickleball was higher by a couple of places. I will get that chart up as we're talking, but it was it was a pretty broad, 1,000 participants is pretty broad. So that helped shape the decision. And soccer fields can be used for lacrosse, foosball.
Exactly. I guess I support that as opposed to baseball fields.
Yeah.
So that's good. Okay, thanks. Appreciate that.
Very welcome.
Good. I'm also interested in the other park here you've got up here now.
Dry Creek, yes. So Kurt is our Dry Creek representative, and he's the expert on it. So I'll let him talk away. And let's see if I can't zoom a little bit on this. Oops, I can't. So let's put it there.
So on the Dry Creek Lake, I hopefully everyone's familiar where this is at. This is over by where Smith's is at in Lehigh, along SR 92 and the little gully there. This property, as we discussed last night, this is owned by Northern Utah County Water Conservancy District. There's about 34 acres down there in that ravine that is owned by the Water Conservancy District. The Water Conservancy District has entered into a lease with Lehigh City to lease that ground for Lehigh City to go put in. I call it a pressurized lake. The reason that Lehigh's fairly interested in this is that they will use all the water there for their city pressurized fire hydrant system. Lehigh's fire hydrants are part of their pressurized system. When they put their pressurized system, they took over their old water system and they went and put a new water system throughout the city.
This is pressurized irrigation like we use on our lawns, right?
That's secondary water.
Right.
So this water, they've reconstructed the dam down here at about a cost of 15 million. We saw a lot of movement down there this last year and a half where we saw a lot of trucks, a lot of things. That is starting to come to completion as we speak right now. They're pretty well just doing the last final punch list. So the reconstruction of the dam and of the reservoir is coming to completion. It will now be turned over to Lehigh to start doing the recreational components. And so what we see in front of here is a little bit of the recreational components, which a lot of people seem fairly excited to understand about. So I will start over in the left-hand top area and kind of work across the top. You'll notice it says fee station. So you'll come in one way, coming off of the road, up off that Smith, back by Smith's. You'll come down into it. And as you come down, you'll enter a fee station. This fee station will be the same cost for a Lehigh resident, a Highland resident, or a Provo resident, or a Salt Lake County resident. So there is no difference in that fee. There's going to be enough parking down there, I believe, for about 289 parking stalls.
So that's all these along there, right?
Yeah, that was one of the concerns that a lot of people had is, hey, how much parking is going to be there? As we look at as we go through, there's several amenities. We can see a concession stands there. You see a boat rental. So there will be, you can go down there. You can take your own private boat. It's a non-motorized lake. You can take down your own kayaks, canoes.
So is this the boat ramp right here? That's
for emergency personnel. So let's assume that the public safety, like our fire department and police, need to get on that lake. That is a ramp for their public safety entrance.
So that's dedicated for them, and then the real ramp is.
I don't know if they really need to have so much of a ramp. They should all be small enough.
Kayaks that you can offload on yourself.
And when in listening to Lehigh, as you know, sir, it looks like there's some sand area next to the water, and there's also some grass area. They recognize that there's some that want to be right by the sand, in the sand, going in the lake, and there's probably some that want to be in a grass picnic area that's by the lake, and so they've kind of designed it that way. And so all the amenities here on what I would classify the west side of the lake will be paid for by Lehigh. It'll cost them about $4.5 million. Now that $4.5 million, $3 million, right around $3 million is going to come in from Lehigh City. 1.5 million will come from the Utah County tourism tax. There is another grant that Lehigh got from the outdoor recreation that's going to come in. Highland, they're the property boundary for the lake for the two cities. Highland's boundary is right in the middle of the lake. So as Rod, I think we actually had a slide that showed where the boundary was at. I don't know if that would. We'll have to probably come back to this one. I don't want to get too far away from that.
Okay, pointer option.
You were moving through it here a little bit ago.
Yeah, so how do I, oops. I went out of the presentation mode, sorry.
So I was kind of going through it. The water surface, it will be 21 acres where the water's at. It'll be 26 feet deep. And so, I mean, it's going to be a pretty exciting lake that's going to be there. So
here's the boundary.
As you can see, the little red line in the middle is where the city boundaries are at. On the west side is Lehigh's boundary, where there was about in 2018, Lehigh had asked Highland if we would move our boundary based on a 1990 agreement, and we moved the boundary based off that agreement. And so the boundary for the two cities are in the middle of the lake. This is going to be a regional lake. I mean, it's it's owned by the water district. Lehigh has half the lake. We have half the lake. On the east side of the lake, so maybe we can go back to the original slide about on the east side of the lake is a fisherman's trail. Now, the reason why that trail, it's just going to be a dirt trail. It is not ADA compliant. It's meant for fishermen to be able to kind of access. Naturally, a lot of people will be walking this trail because it will go all the way around the lake. On the Lehigh side, it will be probably an asphalt 10-foot trail. And on the Highland side, it will be a fisherman nature trail on that side, which is probably dirt. If you went and walked there now, you can see where the trails, it's actually already in. There's also a trail across the dam on the far south end. You can actually walk across the dam to get there. You'll notice it shows that there's a connection to the Murdoch Trail. So you can connect right off the Murdoch Trail to go across the dam, or you even could go down the little Fisherman's Trail. It's pretty
Now,
exciting.
you've walked that Fisherman's Trail, haven't you? And is it level?
No, it's not. As you see the little things of the zigzags, I come to learn those zigzags did not mean the trail was going. That meant it was going up and downhill. You can see a little bit of the lines. That there's some, whoever walks it, you need to prepare. There will be some steep areas up and down, and so it will be a good hike for some of us.
Yes, and for those of us that are of the age where our knees are starting to not work as well, or we might want a cane or a walker, probably not our best choice.
Well, they do have, if you look, there is that wood fence that's right by the trail. And I will admit that as there are some steeper areas, I did put my hand along that fence to make sure I didn't slip as I went down. When you're saying steep, there's a couple of areas you're going, okay, this is steep enough. I'd like to have a little handrail. So as you're asking about, at least for me, that was comforting to be able to put my hand on a handrail.
All right. Well, thank you for making me feel good, Kurt.
So, this is an exciting lake. Lehigh is going to be maintaining the entire lake, all the improvements. They will be taking care of that, which I think Highland is appreciative. What's interesting on this lake is the north side of the lake is Highland. On the east side of the lake is Highland. On the south side of the lake, it's all Highland. It's really just that little bit of that east side that's really in Lehigh. And so, Highland residents will be able to walk here. My understanding is you'll be able to walk into the lake and won't have to pay a user fee. Now, that could always change based on what they see. But the other thing I learned about Tibble Fork. So this lake is the same size as Tibble Fork. And I'm still trying to get the data to make sure, but they were saying that over 70% of the people using Tibble Fork are coming out of Salt Lake County. Now, I don't know if that might just be an assumption as they're trying to talk to people. I don't know how scientific, but that was coming from the water master, Ernie, that has been up there at the Tibble Fork area. So I would estimate that we will have heavy use from individuals from outside the area. And I think that was one reason why the Utah tourism tax felt like this would also be a good, that they were willing to help support some of that just because they recognize this will be a regional lake.
Yep. And on the Tibble Fork data, the Park Service, or not the Park Service, the U.S. Forest Service, they go out and they do surveys of people who are there, random, and they've done that in the past, and that's how they got those numbers.
Okay.
So Ernie he talks with the parks people all the time and the forest people all the time because he's there. And then you'll be participating in this next year, and maybe we'll get you started this year, but there's a group that meets monthly that includes the National Park Service, the U.S. Forest, the local mayors, UDOT, the sheriff's office, and we just talk about the canyon.
Okay.
Up there and issues. It's a coordinating meeting, and it's really useful. It's interesting. It's amazing what you find out that people do up there that you really wish they didn't. They bring up mattresses, kind of like what they do in Highland Glen Pond. They'll float couches and mattresses and burn them, and they do that up at Tibble Fork. So that's a long way to haul stuff like that up.
Well, hopefully this will have a little more eyes on it, that if there's issues,
Yes.
that there'll probably be a little more eyes on it. And that, we do have a mutual aid agreement. When people hear public safety mutual aid, that means let's assume there was an emergency that happened here at the lake. If someone, let's say, was having some heart problems, and it might be in Lehigh, on their Lehigh side, the call would go out to have mutual aid respond to be able to take care of the medical need. That's the closest unit. Highland, when I looked at it, would possibly also get the same call. So they'd call Lehigh, and Highland would probably respond down to this area, or the Lone Peak Public Safety. Now, if it's just hey, we've got a noise complaint, I imagine it'll just be Lehigh Police and our police won't respond on something like that. But emergency calls, I would imagine you're going to see, Lone Peak Public Safety as well as Lehigh respond to this area.
Yeah, I agree. And in fact, the chief said, if they have a call and they come, it's likely we'll be there as well, because the number of people you need for different calls changes, and you often need backup. So we do that regularly for other cities, and they do the same for us.
Yeah, very, very common, especially with our fire department to do mutual aid, where we get a lot of mutual aid. If we have ever a fire, you'll notice that usually American Fork and Lehigh have come into our community, as well as if they have something on their community, we usually respond. So on that, are there any questions on Dry Creek Lake that anyone has?
I'll just make a comment. My wife is going to be delighted because she would really like the beach except the sand. So now this is a place she would likely take grandkids to if they were local, because the beach wouldn't come home with us, and so, or wouldn't have to anyway. So,
yeah, I think the concern is on busy days that 289 parking spaces will not be enough. I mean, that's now naturally as we look, you have a Smith's big parking lot there. It'll be up. That's private property. They could come and enforce some parking issues there. But we do have residents that are concerned about some parking maybe in Canterbury. I know the Stevens Lane residents were a little bit concerned, but they have a fence pretty well all the way along their property. And the agreement is the residents on Stevens Lane, even though they can't access from their property down here. So it's not like, hey, they get a gate and the other people can't come. It's if you see any gates along those property on the Highland side, that is specifically for public safety. If there happens to be a safety issue, a fire or other emergency things, they can access and get down into that area since it's on the other side of the lake. So
righto. So yeah, so no questions from our vast audience of, well, we're down. Sarah, looks like you're the
winner.
Well, good.
So that the other thing is, Rod, when we talk about parks and open space, the trails always come up. You said that was one of the highest amenities. This will have a trail around it. I don't know if this is an appropriate time to talk about. When you talk about what's coming here in a year, we first got to get through. We have a referendum that's going to be on the ballot, or a proposition that will be on the ballot, the Wimbleton proposition. That will give some guidance probably on trails a little bit.
You want me to bring up that?
Yeah, it's probably a good time to talk about it. If anyone comes back and watches this, that might be of interest, because it's something that is affecting the city, that's going to be up for vote this year, as well as based on what the decision might happen would also happen. What's going on? Your wife asked a question about if there'll be crosswalks going from Smith to there. That's a good question. I don't know the answer. I would assume that would be on Lehigh, that they probably will put some type of crosswalk markings there for people to be able to come across, but that's just an assumption.
Yeah, and that's Lehigh's call.
Yeah. Mayor, what you have up here, and we all can check, is the Wimbleton referendum. There is the proposition number 1 that will be on the ballot. Just states that on December 3rd, 2019, the Highland City Council approved a removal and sell of 5.77 acres of public open space property and 5,592 linear feet of paved public trails located in and around the Wimbleton subdivision. And it gives the address to the neighboring residents. The sale will take place only if approved by voters. You vote for, if you are okay for the sale, you'll vote for. If you're against the sale, you'll vote against. Now, anytime you usually hear showing of trails, most residents will say, hey, hold it, we don't really want to do that. Maybe we need to go back in history of why this has even been brought about, how this happened. The residents in Wimbleton have been frustrated for 19 years that what they feel has been the lack of maintenance of the trail and open space. They, to quote them, they always say Highland has been a bad neighbor, or that just because of the eyesore, what they feel is an eyesore behind their property, and so there was a play in the city code. There was so this goes back many years, but probably back I think it was 2013, somewhere in that time period. The city council voted to do what was called a neighborhood option trails. And they would let the neighborhoods decide if they would like to remove those trails. And they had to go get 70% of the signatures of those in their subdivision to agree to that, to be able to remove the neighborhood option trail.
But then it would still be a council decision, right? After,
yeah, it'd still be
just to get it in front of the council.
Yeah, and I'll be very open. I don't feel Wimbleton should have been on that list. We can talk a lot of political things that happened there, but for some reason, Wimbleton was put on that neighborhood option trail list. When I look across some of the other trails that were put on that list, some of them made sense of, hey, these are going nowhere. The trail goes to a dead end. The trail's probably not going to, really doesn't, work as a trail. This one, when it came to the council, for me, I questioned why this was put on the neighborhood option trail list. There's always political things because you're dealing with political situations in the city. But the proposal that I think, if you look at the drawing here, the line in yellow is where the trail would be removed. So if it is approved to sell the trail, it will be everything in yellow here that will be sold. Now, for me, looking at this when I was on the city council, and I look at it, currently, there's some other things I think people need to look at. If you look right in the middle, there's kind of an outlay where it has kind of a subdivision outlay that has different coloring on there. Part of the proposal that was approved on December 3rd, 2019, it approved that they could sell just sections of the trail. So if they can't get all the residents that back the trail to agree to buy it, then it can be sold just in sections. So if you see that first section appears to be just 4 homes in that turquoise area, well, just those 4 homes could buy that. And then as you go to the more of the tan area, if they decide not to buy, then the trail is not sold there. Then you go to a little bit more of the maroon area down there. They'd have to get everyone along that area to agree. In my opinion, if you sell one section of the trail, really all the trail becomes useless because the connectivity is broken up. I voted against this when it came up on the council. I will be strongly advocating to save the trails. Anyone that wants to talk to me about it, I'm happy to have this discussion about why I feel that way, or why the residents. I do understand the residents are frustrated. However, I believe in the last 2.5 years to 3 years, we have shown as a council that their concern was the trails would not be maintained. Well, we've put together a 5-year trail maintenance plan. We have funded the trails. The trails are not coming out of the open space fee. They are coming out of there's a special sales tax that was a transportation tax that Utah County did in December of 2019. The council knew that was happening. It was a little frustrating for me. We knew that was happening. We told them that we'd have funding. But right now, I think most people, if you've walked trails, notice the city has been doing, if it be the seal coat, crack seal, and we have a plan in place to take care of all the trails. The other concern the residents brought up, which is a valid concern, is the maintenance. Now, some people like more of a natural trail, and some want to have it well maintained by the trails. And so it's up to the perception of the individual. Now, this sits behind homes, and so I can appreciate the frustration of there being weeds back behind there. But we have also upped the maintenance of the native vegetation area. Not only have we mowed more often, but just this year with funding, we've allocated and hired a new employee that is an arborist to take care of not only our trees, but also understands weeding, has come in to help us along with the sticker weeds, which has been a complaint, not only in this one trail section, across all city trails. And so, I mean, I would advocate that the residents will vote against the sale of the Wimbleton property. I think as a council and as the mayor, I will advocate that we take care of our trails. And so that's kind of where I'm at. I'm sorry, Rod, I've been, kind of took a lot of the time there. I don't know if you kind of.
I would just say I'll second everything you said. I think of the reasons stipulated for getting rid of the open space and trails, those have largely been mitigated since that decision was made. In fact, we've done seal coats on about 60% of the trails. And like you said, we have a 5-year plan to rehabilitate our entire trail system. There are some sections that need to be just, dug up and started over. And that's what's the expensive part. So seal coating is very cheap. So we did that. And now over the next 5 years, just like with our 7-year road plan, we will get our trails back in really good shape. And then when they're in good shape, it's easy to maintain. So I will advocate, I have advocated for keeping them. And when I'm not the mayor, I would continue to advocate to keeping them. And one thing, I am not a big trail user personally, but we've done city surveys for the last 6 years. And anytime we ask any question around parks, amenities, what do you like? What do you use? Trails always come up really, really high.
Yeah.
In terms of, what people really want and like and use. And so, a lot of people use the trail system.
Rod, as I was kind of going through this, I kind of have to laugh because, I come from a business standpoint, been an entrepreneur most of my life, owned several different businesses. One of the businesses that my wife calls it my hobby, which is real estate investment. But a lot of the properties I have a lot of asphalt on it, have a lot of maintenance that's required. And I was kind of looking and going, this, as a skill set, this is a skill that I've kind of developed. Rod, I think you've been very good here also in, hey, let's get together a maintenance plan. Let's get together how we're going to take care of it. And let's get going with them. And you've been very good. You were there when the city put together the road plan, and I think gave some good direction. We kind of looked at what the road plan was when we came up with the 5-year plan. I think, as we look at maintenance to try to, go in and hey, what needs to be done, what we've been hearing from the residents. Like I said, I think the residents have a valid concern that they've been voicing. And so we're just trying to be good stewards, listening to what those concerns. And I think we've done our best to address. It doesn't mean things are running exactly perfect, but I think, you as a mayor, you've done a good job in helping the council with some direction here. And I think we're on a good path to have, trails maintained, our open space around it. And I think just everything seems to be going a little bit better than what it was, 2018 or before. And it's nothing against the councils then. Some of it comes down that we had funding. I mean, when you talk about Utah County passing a 1/4 sales tax that's specifically for transportation that only can go to roads, trails, or sidewalks, it kind of helped us be able to get funding for the trails. I mean, so that the timing.
We're getting over $200K a year from that. And the council made a decision to split that between sidewalks and trails. So our prior annual trail budget was $35,000 a year. Now it's over $135,000. So that has made a has significantly increased our opportunities for making the trails better.
So just once again, so that's.
Can I just add one thing?
Sure.
Because I really appreciate you reviewing this and going over it. And I could not agree more. And as I've been out talking to folks, the only people that have been in favor of the sale of the trails are those who will benefit, but with the property. Yeah. Everyone else has been against it. And as I think about what serves our community, the young, the old, the in-between, the walkers, the joggers, the bikers, right? I can't think of anything else that serves this community quite the way that all of those trails do. And so I'm with you. I appreciate that you'll be defending those, and I'm on that same track.
Thank you, Sarah. I think your words were well said. I mean, we all love trails, and it's not just, and I recognize that, as people have trails behind their house, I have to, would I really like to have a trail or people walking my backyard? I recognize that that's probably, some would, like I said, it depends on some would, some wouldn't. However, all the trails I think we're looking at that the city had, they were there. And I know some of the residents get frustrated. Well, we recognize they're there. We thought the city would be better stewards. We're trying to be better stewards, as they come in and voice, I think Mayor Mann's been very good to listen. I think as a city council, we've been very good to listen. And if there's other concerns that still come up, well, listen, Sarah, if you happen to get on city council, you'll be a good steward there to be able to help listen, to those residents.
True.
Yes. And I do think we need to be good stewards.
So, but I also think we need to save the trails. Anyway, is there any questions on the Wimbleton referendum or anything else we need to kind of cover here? You think, Sarah, is there anything that you have questions on or have a better, maybe sharing a better understanding as you talk to some of the residents?
Yeah, I don't have any questions. I've just been surprised, because I was really hoping to gain an understanding of who was for the of the trails, and even looking for anyone who didn't have a trail in their backyard that they had a personal interest in. And again, I just haven't found one yet. So I'm sure they're out there, but, and I agree with you, Kurt, that we have to be good stewards, and I would be frustrated if I had a sticker patch, but, and so that I think the city needs to be well aware of and put forth the appropriate effort. And so I appreciate the efforts that the city has done so far. And in fact, I just heard tonight, just for your feedback, how much the city has improved in the last year in taking care of the trails. So you should probably hear that, because that was both you, Mayor Mann, and you, Kurt, as part of the council.
Thank you. Mayor, we probably need to make sure the employees hear that, meaning the city employees and the staff. I think they, it's easy for us to say, hey, here it is. The work's being done by the city staff, but this Wimbleton referendum, there'll be a lot of conversations in the next 60 days about it. We're hoping that we can save the trails. We'll let the residents, Sarah, it is, you kind of caught on to one thing. I always, when things come up, I always have to look at the eyes. What's the issue here? Is there something that I'm not seeing? Some here along the trail are just frustrated only because they feel like the maintenance hasn't been there. Some of them, I also would understand that they would probably like to buy that space to get rid of the trail. It also increases their property they have on their home. So there's probably a mixture, but I always have to go, for me, as I always look from the Highland eyes and going, and maybe because it's maybe how I think, but I do agree that some probably see this as an opportunity, one, to maybe get rid of an issue, but also to increase their property lot at a very reasonable price. But that's not the only reason. There's some that have them they just would like to get rid of the trail and not have the concern, and they can maintain it. We have some residents, by the way, they're very good that they go back there and do mow the area. Now, some of that's good and bad. Some of the, I don't know a lot of, it's interesting when you bring up about people complaining about stickers. I have a pasture that's still off the side of my house. And I had a neighbor call and says, hey, the sticker thorns are coming into the sidewalk. And I go, man, I have the same concern with my pasture. And my wife keeps telling me to quit spraying Roundup so close along the fence just to let the grass, because the grass will choke out the sticker things, the sticker weeds. Well, it's the same thing we have with the city is sometimes if we've got some natural grass growing there that will kind of choke out some of the weeds, and people add water from their lawn over to that, or they spray it, and it helps the sticker weed actually flourish more. As why I'm trying to use my example for my pasture, I'm noticing where I spray and then I put water, the sticker weeds seem to love it.
So when you water where you water is where the weeds grow.
Yes. So
and that's sometimes things that seem intuitively obvious are not, and that's something I've learned as a mayor over and over again, whether it comes to traffic or roads. We make these assumptions in our mind, and they just sometimes aren't true. Like, I can't tell you how many times, it hasn't happened a lot lately, but when we started our road maintenance plan, people were mad that we were taking care of, we were putting seal coating on roads when nearby there were really failed roads with lots of potholes and problems. And what we were trying to do is the roads that haven't failed yet, keep them from failing, because that's way more cost effective than fixing a bad road. So in some ways, if your road is really bad, you're on the bottom of the list because it's not going to cost much more to fix it today than it will 3 years from now. So we've been doing a mix every year of some rehabilitation and then just some maintenance. But we still take care of, if it's a safety issue, that gets taken care of regardless of where its priority is. But like the road that I live near is Country Club Boulevard off of Alpine Highway. And the entrance there, for any of you that you've driven in there, is really, it almost looks like a contiguous pothole that has been patched. Well, that's getting fixed next year. And that's, what did I say? This year we're in our 4th year of the plan. Next year will be the 5th year. So.
And Mayor, I think you bring up maybe we can now go to the traffic, because that's right where your roads, your traffic plan, your road plan.
Let's see.
That's secondary waterway. We can kind of
traffic. Here we go.
So right here, I think you were talking about on the left-hand side is what you're talking about, the 7-year plan.
Right.
Is over here where the home's going to be at what year. By the way, I got kudos to the council that did that in 2017. That took a lot of time. But I think it's given the residents comfort to know that roads are coming, I think for the council, when you won it before, wasn't there a lot of complaints about it?
Yeah, that was number one complaint. And then the city had tried to get funding for it twice and had been nixed, once by just a referendum without going to a vote. And the next one was with a referendum. In fact, it's when I got elected. And it got torpedoed pretty good. So people complained about the roads, but they weren't willing to fund them. And I think one of the reasons they weren't willing to fund it is they didn't know what we were going to do, because the city didn't have a detailed plan. So we took 2-3 years to put a plan together, to do a second opinion, to go through prioritize. And we involved a lot of residents. We had a transportation advisory committee that was involved in the process all the way through. We ended up with a plan, and we knew exactly what we were going to do. We knew that there would be some changes occasionally, but this is what we're doing every year. This is the sequence. This is the kind of treatment. This is what it's going to cost. And so we were able to go to the residents with a plan, and then they loved it. And we had people say, well, I want to do it in 5 years, not 7. Let's charge more. And we got, at one of our town meetings, we got an ovation at the end of the meeting. And I just shook my head and I said, okay, we're asking for more money for something they 2-3 years ago voted down overwhelmingly. And now they're applauding for us when we're coming and asking for, it was $18.50 a month. And some of them even want to pay more so it gets done faster. But having a specific plan gives people comfort, so that you can say, yeah, this is going to happen. And it lets them hold you to account if it doesn't. And so far we've been on track. We've had to make some changes to which roads got fixed when, because of projects that come in the middle that we weren't thinking about, or development that happens, or a sewer line that needs to get replaced 1 year. And so you don't want to, like on 9600, we were supposed to do that 2 years ago, but with the Canal Boulevard coming in, we had to do a sewer project. And so we deferred that a year so we could take care of the sewer and fix the road in the same year, instead of do the road, dig it up again to fix the sewer, and then have to replace it. Because when you cut into a road, it shortens the lifespan of the road. to keep it as untouched as possible.
Well, and you brought up, there's one project that I think we were trying to do even 2 years ago, 6800 West, we call it the Costco Road.
Yes.
You know, that is something, if all the stars, moon, and everything's, you know, come and line up, 6800 West should be getting done next year. You know, that's been, we kept thinking the last 2 years would be coming, but if we can get that the moon and stars and sun and everything to come together, I think we'll be able to get 6800 West next year,
Yeah.
which is a full reconstruction of that whole road, widening of it. You know, it's a little bit more invasive than just a road
Right.
project.
Yeah, and just so people know, the current hang up this year has been acquiring the property along the road to expand it. And we had a number of them to do, and we've had, until just recently, we've had 3 holdouts. And we just resolved, staff, I shouldn't say we, but staff just resolved one of them, so we're down to 2. And we have meetings scheduled with both of them in the near future, working towards resolving it. I don't know that one more meeting will resolve it, but we're making progress. So hopefully if we can get that done within the next couple of months, we can actually then go out to bid on the project. So that next year it will get done. And it's probably the road I get the most complaint about in terms of condition of the road. Get complaints about traffic a lot. North County Boulevard is one of the highest traffic complaints, but in terms of road condition, this is the one that everybody thinks of Highland as third world. Or not. The people that complain say it's like a third world country. Well, I've been to India 40 plus times, and I promise you that road is better than a lot of what's out there in third world countries.
Well, and you know, so we have the plan now, Mayor. My understanding is the funding, the 1850 fee that's charged monthly, unless something changes with a property tax change, that fee is supposed to sunset in 10 years, which is timing where our bonds are being paid off. Is that
2027? Yeah.
Okay. But when the bonds pay off, then we'd have to look, hey, is the fee needed? We have adequate funding to, you know what's going on. Then on the right-hand side, I think we have our traffic, you know, maybe where some possible future lights might be at. You know, Mayor, you mentioned you get a lot of inquiries about things. You know, probably the one of the big ones that probably will be coming sooner versus later is this one you've highlighted there, the Highland Boulevard and 118th North. So that's going to be one if and when there's a subdivision development that's coming in that's in Lehigh, and we've asked Lehigh and the developer to maybe share in that light cost. So that's something that might be coming about.
Yep, and then here's the next one that's a possibility.
5600.
Yep, and that will happen in the future. It's just when there's enough traffic to warrant it. And then you've got another one here
At Night Boulevard
and Old Bish Lane, and UDOT has already got that on its. Yes, we can put a road here, and again, it'll be dependent on some traffic stuff. This one was an expensive one to do because of the power lines and the power infrastructure that need to be moved when this happens.
Okay.
And I didn't realize how expensive those intersections were until I became mayor. It could cost anywhere on the very cheap end in the $200,000 up to $500,000 to put in an intersection with light, which it just makes you shake your head and roll your eyes. But one thing that UDOT does that's really nice is when they put in an intersection, and this is on the UDOT Road, North County Boulevard and Timp Highway, is they have they put in radar and then a connection to high-speed internet, typically fiber.
Okay.
So that they can monitor and collect data on that light. And then they have a website, and I believe it's traffic.utah.gov. But if you go to u.utah.gov or just Google Utah traffic light data, you can go to a site, and for any light that they have that capability on, you can look at what's happening at that intersection, what traffic is going there, how many people are doing right-hand or left-hand turns. It's pretty comprehensive. So, but putting that capability in there, it does add to the cost of the light, but it does help them manage it, and they can actually adjust the timing of the lights via some centralized control system that they have access to, within a network. Now, because it's adjusting traffic lights, it's not going to be on a public network of any kind. But they actually do a good job of monitoring it. And I think Utah, compared to other states in the nation, is really ahead on how we deal with traffic and data and sharing it. So that's something that you can look at. Another site you could look at if you're interested is something called Crash Map or crashmapping.utah.gov. And that has a map, and it shows you where all the accidents that have been recorded are and have been for like the last 5 years. They go back 5 years, but it takes them about a year to a year and a half to put the data in. So it's a year and a half, maybe even 2 years behind. But you can look at where accidents happen, which intersections in Highland are the most dangerous. The most dangerous one is actually Alpine Highway and Timpanogos Highway is by far, the last time I looked at it, that's where it landed. But you can drill down, you keep zooming in, and you can click on a dot and it tells you what kind of accident it was. Really good information. So we have a lot of data available to us when we make decisions in terms of traffic, and some of that can come out of UDOT. Okay.
One thing that came up this morning that was asked at the public safety board meeting was that they noticed recently that the speed tickets had maybe kind of went down a little bit, that our policemen weren't issuing as many speeding tickets, and the question came, why was that happening? And some of it was, hey, because of COVID, we'd mentioned for our officers to limit some of their interaction unless they saw a serious offender. And I imagine that will ebb and flow depending on what happens with COVID and the pandemic. But some people are going, hey, how come we aren't seeing as many individuals pulled over? Maybe I never was worried about that. It was someone else that brought it up. I thought, well, I'm not going to worry about it if I didn't get pulled over. But some recognize that.
And then they also said that the state legislature recently passed a law that said you cannot issue quotas to your officers in terms of tickets, because some people said, even our chief said, sometimes you'd say, hey, you need to get a couple tickets during your shift just to make sure people were focused on traffic enforcement. So the ability for the police agencies to set those kind of standards is gone. But I think you're right. COVID was, what I heard was COVID was probably the biggest reason.
Yeah.
So all you speeders out there, or marginal speeders, not necessarily to red light runners, but if you're a marginal speeder, that was a COVID blessing. How's that? Anything else before we wrap up? We're a little bit over, but that's okay. Anything you want to say? You know what, Kurt, if you're willing to, maybe we'll try and do this until the new year starts, where we're both on, since you're the mayor-elect. We'll call it Meet with the Mayors instead of Meet with the Mayor.
I'm game with it. I think it's it's good. I'd like to have some. We can always have different questions that come up or different issues try to address. So that way to give people a little bit of a feel of maybe what, I call it the training, that you're chiming in on different issues, or maybe a little bit of what you thought. I'm not sure there's going to be a lot of change. People are going, hey, what are you going to, I don't feel like the city's doing a lot of terrible things. There'll be, personality changes and some things that way, but I'm not sure there's going to be drastic changes any direction, one way or another.
Yeah, and there's so much that happens anyway. I have found that you just can't necessarily affect change on a wide variety of fronts. You just have to focus on a couple of areas. Like for me, one of the focus areas, and it's taken a long time, but it has been this open space, the parcels, the protecting the trails, which we did. Absent this Wimbleton one, we now no longer have option trails. We said all trails will be city trails. There will be no option trails. So there's been data about open space, and we're still working through that, but we made progress on some, selling some really or enabling people to buy property that we really don't want.
And I would imagine there'll still be, that will be an ongoing, like, both of us were on that committee to kind of look at that. That's what I'm saying. I'm not sure that there's going to be a major shift. Naturally, open space always seems to come up as a concern. I would hope we can kind of come to some things. I think that the city's going to have some studies that will help guide us a little bit on what the study is showing, how much each park is to maintain. With something I know we've done some different data things, but to have an outside study help guide us a little bit.
And that's starting. They started work. They haven't really dug in yet, but they'll be having meetings now. So I'm not sure how long that'll take. Probably end of October before we get data out of that. But you're right, that's useful.
Like I said, the other, one of the other things that maybe, like you said, hey, what would be, I am a little concerned about how we're doing with emergency response. And some of that's just because we're seeing in the last year, we saw down Cedar Hills, or not Cedar City and Enoch, the areas down there, a lot of flooding. We're seeing some fires that have happened, up in the Lehigh. Some of it, like you said, you're responding where, hey, it was maybe a little, your response is different. Highland is probably, with flooding, it would be a pretty, torrential downpour. And so we could have some areas, but we're a little bit on a higher ground,
right.
It would probably
we do have fire risk and we have earthquake risk, and there are things we can do to mitigate some of that. That was one of my items that I really didn't move the needle on very much, and I wanted to move it more. But there's stuff to do there. Absolutely.
Well, no, and and so there'll be some, maybe some, trying to look at some things. I'm sure water conservation will be one of the other, as we look at here, that's going to be probably heading into next year. We've tried to do some, but depending on our rain, it could get a lot heavier next year, meaning the restrictions and things, and that will just be based on what we're seeing in our secondary water and with the rivers and with the water storage. It's not really, there's going to come a point where we just can't do certain things.
Yes, and let's be sure and close with. Let me stop share this and go to the Jeff Murdoch info on water usage. I think that's really useful and it's timely. So I do want to share that. So let's go. It was at the front of the meeting. So this slide here shows, and it's a logarithmic slide, which means as you go up, it's much more dense, right? So you can see to go from 100 to 200 is a lot less than to go from 100 to 0.
Yeah.
But so that there's a bigger gap between average over the last few years, which is the yellow. Sorry, I was pointing with my finger and that didn't do you any good along here. And what we currently have, and according to Jeff right now, the flow we're getting out of the canyon is the second lowest on recorded history. And it's the lowest he's ever seen in terms of water coming out of the canyon. But what he's showing here is our year-to-date usage with respect to this year versus last year. And we started out and it was really marginal. The last time we had a report, he said we were saving about about 5%. Now, today, we're 15% below norm. So that's I'm telling, we should tell residents, go, thank you. And if we continue on this track, we're actually going to end the year in better shape with respect to water storage that we have up at Deer Creek Reservoir, or similar to maybe even a little bit better than we were at the beginning of the year. And that's one of our concerns, is we want to retain our storage there so that if there's a drought next year, we have something to bank on.
Good.
Because if we had gone on track with previous years, we would not have had any money in the bank or water in the bank, so to speak. And that would have meant next year, under a drought condition, would be really tough.
Well, it would probably mean by somewhere in July, we only have that 10 PSI. We're after hardly doing anything. I mean, it's at least
Right.
with some water storage, we might be able to water trees. I mean, if we really don't get hardly any rain or snow, we're going to be looking to try to save trees next year versus lawns. It's just,
Yes.
we all have to be, praying that we're going to be able to get some moisture this year, because it is serious.
Yep. I amen to that. No.
And I think the plan, what people might see in the future, is Highland is going to be putting in pressurized meters. We are starting to move towards requiring every connection, that any new build has to have a meter on it. We have also started putting in the plans that we are preparing. I think it comes up as a start. I think starting next year, 2023, we're going to start trying to do 1,000 homes a year and connecting up to pressure, to a meter, to our pressurized secondary system.
Yeah, we've got about 42, somewhere between 42 and 4,400 meters that we would need to do.
Yeah.
So all new construction has had meters required for the last 3 years, but there's a lot that didn't have them. So
so the water will be a concern coming forward. I'm not sure, unless we have a real bumper crop of snow, I just don't think we'll still have some restrictions next year, probably.
yes, I'm sure that, and it has been for the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And then you get the year when we're worried about flooding, right? Like,
Yeah.
So you never know what tomorrow will bring, for sure. Right?
Well, and like you said, it's been unusual. Look at Cedar City right now. Here they are. We're in a drought, and now they've had severe flooding, and it seems to be very localized in their community. And same with Enoch. It might be that we have up, and I remember several years ago, the Beacon Hills area was having some, a little bit of mudslides coming in some people's backyards, but it was really only the Beacon Hills area. We weren't experiencing it throughout all of Highland. It's like this last windstorm, it seems to have hit a little corridor, knocking down fences and trees, maybe not all of Highland. And so that's your emergency preparedness and things. You're going to have to respond a little different to different areas, possibly.
Yes, agreed. Well, thank you for joining me tonight, Kurt. I enjoyed
Thank you.
it.